Welcome back to the Investing Talk podcast. Today we are going to look closely at Intuitive Machines, a company that's been in the news a lot lately in the space sector, especially after their mission to the moon. They've partnered with NASA on this lunar exploration push and their IM-2 mission. The Athena lunar lander
Yeah.
has been all over the news, both for its success and for some of the challenges that have come up.
Yeah, it's a story that really shows, I think, both the risks and the potential rewards, that are part of space exploration. Intuitive Machines actually landed their spacecraft on the moon on March 6th, 2025. And that's a big deal, especially for a company that's relatively new to this whole field.
It was a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
And at first it seemed like, a perfect success. But then things got a bit more complex. There's some uncertainty now about how the lander is actually oriented on the moon. It could be tilted on its side, and that could cause problems for power generation using its solar panels.
And this is where the investment world has really taken notice. On March 6th, when this potential issue started to spread, Intuitive Machines stock, that's LUNR, dropped more than 17%, and this downward trend, it continued. By March 7th, the stock had dropped 19% during the day and then a pre-market loss of 36.4%. And there were even reports of a single-day drop of 50% at one point.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride for investors. And this issue with how the lander is sitting on the moon, it seems to have really spooked the market, more than some might have expected.
Well, there are a few reasons for this strong reaction. A sideways landing, that could have big technical consequences. If the solar panels aren't getting enough sunlight, the lander might not be able to generate power or collect the scientific data it was meant to. So it raises some serious doubts about the mission's goals.
So the concern is this technical problem. It could put the whole mission at risk. And this doubt translates into worries for investors about the financial side of things.
Exactly. Intuitive Machines is still kind of finding its place in the space industry. And any setbacks, those can have a much bigger impact on investor confidence compared to more established companies like SpaceX or Boeing, those bigger players. They have a proven track record, they have more resources, and their stock prices aren't as affected by challenges with individual missions.
It almost seems like investors got swept up in the initial excitement, the successful landing. And then when this potential issue came up, there was maybe an overreaction leading to the big sell-off.
Yeah, it does look like a classic case of buy the rumor, sell the news. And we saw this with Intuitive Machines before, with their IM-1 mission back in 2024. There's often a lot of optimism, a lot of investment leading up to a big event. And then there's a correction once the event is over, and especially if there are some unexpected hiccups.
But to say this stock plunge is only because of the technical issue, maybe that's too simple. Weren't there some broader things going on in the market too?
You're right. This all happened at the same time as a general downturn in the market, particularly with growth stocks. And Intuitive Machines, with their ambitious goals and potential for quick growth, they fall into that category. And on top of that, LUNR was trading at a 314% premium. That made it more vulnerable to corrections.
Can you explain what that premium means and how it affects investors?
Of course. A premium in this situation, it means the difference between a company's stock price and its actual value, which is calculated from its assets, earnings, and other financial factors, a 314% premium. That tells us investors were valuing Intuitive Machines much higher than its fundamental worth. They were optimistic about its future. But this also means the stock is prone to big drops when there's any uncertainty.
So it sounds like a bunch of things came together to create this stock market turbulence. The issue with the lander got investors worried, and this was made worse by the general market downturn and the premium attached to LUNR. It was like a perfect storm for a price drop.
Yeah, it's a reminder, I think, that investing in a company like this, Intuitive Machines, comes with risks. Especially in a sector like space exploration, the market reacts really quickly to news, both good and bad.
So the potential rewards are there. But investors really need to be prepared for this kind of volatility.
Absolutely. The space sector, it's getting a lot of attention. You've got things like NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services program, that's the CLPS, and there's growing commercial interest. But it's also super competitive, and for these newer players, like Intuitive Machines, every single mission, it's crucial for building that credibility and trust with investors.
Let's talk about that CLPS program for a second. It's been mentioned a couple of times, and I think it's worth explaining what it actually is for anyone who's not familiar with it.
Sure. So NASA's CLPS initiative, it basically contracts with private companies like Intuitive Machines to send stuff to the moon. It's a way for NASA to use commercial technology to achieve its goals in lunar exploration, and also to encourage a competitive private space sector. This program's a big deal for companies like Intuitive Machines. It provides revenue and it validates their technologies.
So these partnerships with NASA, they're really important for companies trying to get a foothold in this area. But even with this setback, with the IM-2 mission, NASA's still supporting Intuitive Machines, right?
That's right. NASA's already got them signed on for the IM-3 mission. That's scheduled for 2026. And that continued support, that's a strong signal. It shows that NASA understands the challenges that come with space exploration, and they're not put off by a single incident, especially when a company has a history of innovation and a commitment to working through these technical hurdles.
That has to be reassuring for investors, especially those who are worried about the long-term impacts of what happened. And it's not just NASA that's still optimistic about Intuitive Machines. Several analysts, including those from Cantor Fitzgerald and Canaccord Genuity, they still think the company has a good future.
Yeah, they're sticking with buy ratings on the stock, and some have even set price targets as high as $22. That means they believe this recent drop in price, it's just a temporary setback. These analysts are probably looking at Intuitive Machines' strong partnerships, the role they play in the growing space economy, and their potential for growth in the future.
Sounds like there are reasons to be hopeful, but there are still some unknowns with the IM-2 mission. The big question, is the Athena lander going to be able to do what it was meant to, despite this possible sideways landing?
The next few weeks will be key. Intuitive Machines. They're working hard to figure out the situation and to find ways to deal with the challenges caused by how the lander is sitting. There's a press conference coming up about Athena's status that might give us more information about how they're planning to move forward.
What should investors be paying attention to? And you know anyone who's following this story, what are some specific things to watch for?
I think any updates about how the lander is working, that's crucial. Can they get a stable power supply going? Are the scientific instruments still working? These are the things that will determine if the mission can still meet its goals.
Okay, so beyond the immediate technical problems, what about the long-term implications for Intuitive Machines?
It'll be interesting to see how they use what they've learned from this. Will they change the design of future landers? Will they adjust how they do things to reduce risks? Showing that they can learn and adapt. That will be key to regaining investor confidence and getting new investment.
And this brings us back to the main focus of this podcast, investing. What are the big takeaways for our listeners, those who are interested in the space sector? What can they learn from all of this?
The Intuitive Machines story. It's a good example of how investing in this growing industry works. It shows how important it is to do your research, to not just get caught up in the excitement around a company or a specific mission.
It's not just about the successes. It's also about understanding the potential risks and how complex this all is.
Right. It's so important to look at a company's track record, their technology, how strong their partnerships are, and their vision for the future. And remember, space exploration is incredibly exciting, but it also comes with inherent risks.
So for people who are thinking about adding space exploration companies to their portfolio, what advice would you give them?
Be strategic, not impulsive. Don't let the ups and downs of the market in the short term sway you. Think long term.
This whole episode has really shown that investing in space exploration, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You need patience, careful consideration, and you need to be ready for the challenges that will inevitably come up.
It's about believing in the future potential of this sector and knowing that it's going to be a journey with both really exciting highs and some challenging lows.
You know the story of Intuitive Machines? It's kind of like a mini version of what's happening in the whole space exploration industry. We're seeing more private companies getting involved, faster innovation, and these ambitious goals, things we used to think were just science fiction. And this is attracting a lot of investment interest. But as we've been talking about, it's not without its risks.
Yeah, and the way the market reacts so strongly to any updates about these missions, and the way overall market trends can affect how these companies are valued, that just shows how investors need to be cautious, even while they're excited about this sector.
It's a good reminder. Space exploration is captivating. It makes us think about all these possibilities for the future. But we can't forget about those sound investment principles.
And what makes this even more interesting is that space isn't just for governments and these huge corporations anymore. Smaller, more nimble companies, like Intuitive Machines, they're playing a crucial role. It's creating a whole new landscape of investment opportunities.
It's a really exciting time for anyone interested in this area. It feels like this time of discovery, of pushing boundaries, kind of like the early days of the internet.
Yeah.
Or the personal computer.
And just like those times, when things were really changing, the potential rewards for investors who make smart decisions, they could be huge. But of course, Not every company is going to be successful. Even with all the research you do, investing in space exploration, it has those inherent risks.
This has been a really insightful look at Intuitive Machines, their lunar mission, and what's happening in the space exploration industry as a whole. As we wrap up our conversation today,
Well, as we look ahead, think about the role that space exploration is going to play, not just for the economy, but for science, for culture, this whole sector. It represents our desire to explore, to discover, to push the limits of what humans can do.
and for those of you who are thinking about investing in this really dynamic sector, remember what we talked about today. Have a strategy, do your research, and be ready for a journey. It's going to have its ups and downs.
This has been the Investing Talk podcast. If you enjoyed this discussion, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. We really appreciate you joining us for this in-depth look at intuitive machines and the exciting world of space exploration.